Welcome everyone. Today it is the first industrial orientation webinar from one of our expert faculty. Regarding faculty, I just want to give some introduction. He is A. Ramesh Kumar Reddy. He did his graduation from SV University, Andhra Pradesh, and masters from IIT Kharagpur in 2008. And after that, he has worked in various fields spanning from power sector, oil and gas sector, irrigation sector, and high voltage and extra high voltage substation design. And he has worked for leading engineering consultancy companies in India as well as abroad. He worked initially in the Tata Consultancy Engineering, later in Fluor Daniel, and then currently is working in Mott MacDonald and Company in Muscat. Okay, he has a vast experience in the design aspects of substations and various other electrical equipment. Okay, so I hope.
Good evening, all. So my name is Ramesh Kumar Reddy. Yeah, Mr. Rafi has already introduced me. So today, the topic that I am going to discuss about is an introduction to substations. So before going to the substations, first let us have an overview of electrical network. The electrical network, mainly the power generation is done at power generation plants. So there are various types of power generation plants, conventional, non-conventional. So again, in conventional, you have thermal power plants, again coal-based or gas-based. So again, in gas-based, you will have open cycle, closed cycle, and in non-conventional, again, you have solar PV, solar thermal, nuclear, wind. So there are different types of power generations are available. These power generation plants are located normally far away from the load centers, and the power also being generated at voltage levels 6.6 kV, 11 kV. So these are the typical voltage levels where power is being generated. So the generated power, we need to transmit this power to the load centers. So for that we need transmission lines, and the transmission voltage levels are 66 kV, 110 kV, and 132 kV, 220 kV, 400 kV, 765 kV. These are the typical transmission voltage levels in India. So we need a step-up transformer and a switching substation there for this, converting this voltage from generation voltage to transmission voltage. Then further, from transmission lines, again we have different networks are there, like say central power grid. Central power grid is the one which is having the central power grid and at state level we have other transmission companies. So they are operating at different voltage levels. So you need to have again couple these two voltages. So we need to have a step down transmission substations for coupling these two. So these sub-transmission voltage levels are generally 66 kV, 132 kV, 220 kV. And there are large industrial consumers who will take these transmission voltages and have their own distribution substations. And further, from sub-transmission, we have distribution substations which converts power at sub-transmission voltage levels to distribution voltage levels. The distribution voltage levels generally are 11 kV, 22 kV, and 33 kV. So from there further it goes to the consumers through distribution transformers. So this is the overall electrical network. So today we will be discussing about substations, and mainly we will be concentrating on outdoor substations. Transformers, power generating stations, overhead transmission lines, transmission substations, and distribution substations. So now we will see what are the different voltage levels we have already seen. We will see how much these are, how much length these are available in India. So we see the 765 kV voltage level transmission lines. These are the around 3,118 circuit kilometers is available in India. So if you compare, see earlier I have not told about DC transmission. So there is also high voltage DC transmission. so plus or minus 500 kV. For that, we need converter stations. So those converter stations we are not going to discuss today. So this is also available in India around 7,000 kilometers approximately, and 400 kV around 89,496 circuit kilometers. Here actually circuit kilometers means normally these transmission lines are laid in double circuit. So it is approximately route length will be around half of this. So from this we can see that 220 kV is the major transmission line in India is 1,22,960 kilometers. And again, we can see here the substations and their capacities. So we can see around 220 kV is the large, means mostly installed substations in India, and afterwards 400 kV and further 765 kV. So recently Power Grid has installed one 1200 kV pilot station in Bina, Madhya Pradesh. So it is a pilot station, and it is being operated as a pilot station, and will be tested in the future course, and they will upgrade if they get successful results. So then the power transmission capacity will grow. So basically the 200 kV will have higher transmission capacity. It is almost equal to around 8 times of 400 kV. So then further you can see these are the distribution voltage levels: 66 kV overhead, 33 kV overhead distribution lines, and 6.6 kV, 11 kV, and 22 kV. So and low voltage lines. Of these, low voltage lines are the longest, and then comes to 11 kV and 22 kV overhead lines. So these are the capacities.
So folks, so far we have studied the typical power system diagram, where it starts with generation, high voltage transmission, then medium voltage transmission, and then go for the distribution. So in this slide you can observe some very important points which our faculty has told. The one thing is that the highest voltage of transmission in India is 765 kV. The highest AC voltage transmission in India is 765 kV, and you can see the circuit length, as our faculty told. Circuit length means, suppose if it is a double circuit line, so we will take it as a 2. I mean, we'll make it a double. So the spanning length would be exactly half of this circuit kilometers. That means the length of the transmission line would be exactly half if it is a double circuit line. So you can get the various lengths of the transmission lines in India. And the one more important point which I really got to know is that 1200 kV AC transmission is being tested in India. That's one thing which you have learned. And in HVDC, you can see that the highest HVDC voltage is bipolar 500 kV line, which is spanning around 7,000 circuit kilometers. So
now we'll move on to our topic, substation. So we will go in the following aspects, like what are the different types of substations. Then we will see about what is the key single line diagram, and we will discuss about a typical single line diagram, and then we will see what are the various equipments in that substation, and finally we'll discuss about typical layout. And these are the main things that we are going to cover in this presentation. Types of substations. So depending upon the location, the types can be classified as indoor substations and outdoor substations. Outdoor substations are also called switch yards because they are located in yards. And depending upon the busbar insulations, we can classify them as air insulated type and SR6 gas insulated type. And depending upon the purpose, we can classify the substations as generation substations, transmission substations, and distribution substations. In distribution substations, primary and secondary distribution are there. We have seen the voltages before. So primary voltages are basically that 6.6 kV. Mainly in India, it is 22 kV, and 11 kV. So we can see just a view, a glimpse of what is a air insulated substation, which is outdoor. Here you can see the size of this substation is also very big, and this is about the voltage level of 220 kV. So we can discuss about each and every equipment in the coming slides, just to show you how this substation looks like. So I have presented this slide. So indoor can be gas insulated switchgear at high voltages, like extra high voltages, 132 kV or 220 kV or 400 kV. So gas insulated substations are available. So we will discuss later in some other topic later, like because AIS and GIS itself can be considered as a separate topic. Okay. So now indoor we will have 33 kV switch gears also available. So these are metal enclosed switch gears. So we can these are the distribution substation, primary distribution. So now we will see key single line diagram. So key single line diagram basically represents into a single line network. Actually, each three phase is represented as one single line, and it indicates basically the electrical power supply network of all the key equipment. And it also shows the arrangement of the equipment so that we can follow the physical layout. And it also gives the main ratings of the equipment, like key ratings. And it will also give the interconnections between different equipment. This is a typical single line diagram. So here there are different switching schemes are available for substation. Basically, I am speaking about high voltage substations. So, but today we are not going to discuss about switching schemes. Here an example what I have taken is a two main scheme. So in two main scheme, see there are two main buses, main bus 1 and main bus 2. And this is the circuit. Okay, your overhead line is coming. Your overhead line, transmission line will be coming from some other station. And the first entry point here, you will have a surge arrestor for protecting the over voltage surges coming in. And we will have voltage transformer, capacitive voltage transformer or EMVT, depending upon the voltage level and depending upon the choice. So then there is a wave trap. This is for basically for power line carrier. Here in this line, they are using the power line carrier communication facility. So then you can see this is an isolator. So isolator, and this is an air switch. Then this is a current transformer, then circuit breaker. It is connected to both the buses with isolators, bus isolators. So bus A isolator and bus B isolator. So this is a typical one bay. This we call it as one bay. And similarly, this is another bay, another line bay. And here they have written vacant bay, means here there will be one space for one bay. So in that layout, there will be one space actually. Then here, this is generator transformer bay, and this is another generator transformer bay. Here, as I explained in the last slide, so it shows the key ratings, like say for surge arrestor, what is the discharge class? And for voltage transformer, you can see the voltage ratio, accuracy class, and burden. And for isolator and air switch, the current rating. And for current transformer, it shows the ratio. Here you are seeing two ratios. It's a dual ratio, 800 and 1200 amperes by 1 amperes. And you are seeing three secondaries actually. So these are 3 core. It's a 3-core CT with a dual ratio. And this is the accuracy class. And again, for we will discuss about further in the next slides when it comes for current transformer. Then this is a circuit breaker. Circuit breaker key ratings like continuous current rating and short circuit current rating is indicated here. Then for bus isolator, current rating is indicated. And for bus bar, current rating, voltage rating, and short circuit rating is indicated.
Yeah, what you can observe, can you scroll up a little bit? Yeah, when observe, see, when you're receiving a transmission line into a substation, yes, it clearly depicted that. So at the entry point, the first element that we are connecting is the surge arrestor. Surge arrestor is the first element. Okay, if the transmission line is having, I mean, if the in a transmission line, if any transient is traveling, this surge arrestor will provide a bypass path. So it will not enter the substation. After that, we are having a capacitor voltage transformer to measure the receiving end voltage. So to measure the receiving end voltage, the second element is the capacitor voltage transformer. And the third element is the wave trap. Wave trap is used in power line carrier communication. That we have an isolator. Every circuit breaker should be preceded with an isolator to provide backup isolation. So there is an isolator. And after that, you have a CT to measure the current and as well as to provide the protection, because it is here you can see primary has 2 different current ratings and secondary, I mean, there are 3 cores. It is a multi-core current transformer. So where different cores can be, different secondary currents can be used for different application, one for measurement, the other for protection as such. And then you have eventually, you're having, before connecting it to the bus bar of the substation, you are having a circuit breaker. Understand? So many elements are there before you are connecting the receiving end of a transmission line to the substation bus bar. So you can have a glimpse of all the elements. And second, one more point which I would like to stress, you can see mostly in a power transformer, in a PT, the secondary voltage, the PT secondary voltage will, in most of the cases, it will be 110 volt divided by root 3. 110 volt divided by root 3, as well as the secondary currents will be mostly either 5 ampere or 1 ampere. So it has been very beautifully depicted in this single line diagram. So mostly when you become an engineer, you will be dealing with the single line diagrams to understand the schematics of the substation. Very well explained, Ramesh.
Now we will see the equipment in switchyard. So there are different, we already have seen few equipment in the single line diagram. So almost all equipment have been covered. So like say bus bars and conductors, circuit breakers, disconnectors or isolators, current transformers, voltage transformers, surge arresters, wave trap, and insulators. So these are the various equipment in switchyard that we are going to see in the coming slides. First, we will see busbar conductors. Here, busbar conductors can be of aluminum or copper conductors. So, is basically here for outdoor switchyards, we are using aluminum conductors, and copper conductors are basically used in indoor switchgears, and that too. In India, most of the cases we are using aluminum busbars only because of economical advantage, and in overseas we are using copper busbars in indoor switchgears, whereas outdoor we are using aluminum. In aluminum conductors also we have tubular construction and standard construction. This tubular construction, it is like a hollow tube. These are rigid conductors. Here you can see in this photograph, here this is a tubular conductor, and here above whatever it is going, this is also a tubular conductor. So in this they are using for bus also, they are using tubular conductor, and for that circuit connection also they have used the tubular conductor. And this one you can see it is a flexible conductor, that is a standard conductor. So these are the two different types of conductors we use in substations basically. So in standard conductors, here also you can see here this is I can say transformer bushing. It is there is a conductor, flexible conductor, which is connected here and which is going to the substation. Here in between there is a road, so they have used the gantries on either side to provide enough clearance. And these conductors are strung from these gantries. On either side you can see they are strung from these gantries. Okay, they have taken it here and they have taken it down. Okay, so these standard conductors are of different categories, like say all aluminum conductor, all aluminum alloy conductor, aluminum conductor steel reinforced. These are the different types of standard conductors are available. So in this, mostly what we use in India is aluminum conductor steel reinforced. So these are widely available and they provide highest mechanical strength compared to the other conductors. So where if you are not getting these aluminum conductor steel reinforced, then we go for these all aluminum conductors for bus bars. And again, these conductors, normally the names given to the conductors are like say animal names, like say bird names, like the different names are given. You look funny actually, they look funny, like say moose conductor and deer conductor, like that different names are there depending upon the rating. Next we'll go to circuit breaker. The circuit breaker, you know the purpose of the circuit breaker. The circuit breaker is used for breaking or making the currents, and under normal operating conditions like load conditions as well as fault conditions. So under fault conditions, it has to break as well as it has to make. It has to make in case of auto reclosing is available. So these circuit breakers, based on construction, we can classify them as dead tank circuit breaker and live tank circuit breaker. So dead tank circuit breaker, you can see this figure, maybe I can zoom it. See here, this is the interrupting chamber. This is the interrupting chamber. This interrupting chamber contains these main contacts as well as arcing contacts, where actual interruption happens happens here only. So arc extinction, interruption as well as arc extinction happens in this interrupting chamber. So this interrupting chamber in that tank circuit breaker is at ground potential. So it is directly, you see, mounted on the structure. So it is at a ground potential. So whatever SF6 or gas, SF6 gas inside shall have the dielectric withstand equal to the whatever the voltage as well as the ground. So it shall have that dielectric withstand capability. And you can see this is the conductor, main line conductor, which is connected on the top of the bushing. And this is the interruption happen here. This is the dead tank circuit breaker. So this is the operating mechanism of the dead tank circuit breaker. So you can see the actual picture looks like this. See, these are the tanks, and this is the bushing. This is the bushing, and this is the bushing current transformer, and this is the operating mechanism. Now, live tank circuit breaker. So in live tank circuit breaker, this interrupting chamber is at line potential. Here, your main conductor comes and connects, and the other side of the circuit, it is connected here, and these are the interrupting chambers. And this is a insulator supporting. This is a supporting insulator for the breaker. Here, this is a mechanism box, and your mechanism is connected through this. So basically, depending upon the interrupting chamber voltage level, we can classify them as dead tank circuit breaker or a live tank circuit.
You have understood the difference, I think. If the interruption chamber potential is, zero, that means if the interruption chamber is connected to the ground directly, then it is called a dead tank circuit breaker. If the interruption chamber is at the same potential as that of the same voltage as that of the contacts which it is separating, then it is called a live tank circuit breaker.
See, most of the EHV circuit breakers nowadays are live tank circuit breakers, and these dead tank circuit breakers are chosen only for certain applications or certain places where they need, like say they want to avoid a separate current transformer. They can have bushing transformer here, bushing current transformer here in case of dead tank circuit breaker. And moreover, this tank is at lower height actually. Okay, the center of gravity of the tank is at low level. So because of that, say high seismic areas, this is better compared to this. Based on the interrupting media, we can classify the breakers as oil circuit breakers, air circuit breakers, vacuum circuit breakers, and SF6 gas circuit breakers. So we can see it is basically arc quenching medium. Okay, in the interrupting chamber, if the arc quenching medium is oil, then it is an oil circuit breaker. So if the arc quenching medium is a vacuum, then we call it as a vacuum circuit breaker. And if the arc quenching medium is air is at a certain pressure, that is pressurized air, so then it is air circuit breaker. If it is SF6 gas, then it is SF6 gas circuit breaker. You can see here, depending upon the pressure, here the plot, you can see the plot here. Here the pressure versus dielectric withstand, considering a distance between electrodes of 25 mm. So here you can see SF6 has the highest dielectric withstand capability compared to air circuit breakers and oil blast circuit breakers. These oil blast circuit breakers nowadays are not in use, and you can see maybe in very old substations if they are not revamped. Otherwise, you can't even see. So air blast circuit breakers also nowadays they are not using. Okay, these are these air blast circuit breakers. Nowadays, only vacuum and SF6 circuit breakers they are in use. So here you can see here also we have seen this electrode gap in mm, versus voltage withstand as a function of distance between electrodes. Here SF6 at 5 bar pressure. So this has the highest dielectric withstand capability. So for distances you can see above maybe after 5-6 mm maybe. And here vacuum is also has a better withstand capability compared to other circuit breakers. So now most of the circuit breakers that are in use are either vacuum or SF6. These vacuum circuit breakers are available up to 33 kV. for both indoor and outdoor. Whereas SF6 circuit breakers are available from say 11 kV to 765 kV, but most commonly used from 33 kV to 765 kV.
Ramesh, one small doubt here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good point if you can observe, gentlemen. So now most widely used circuit breakers are either vacuum. Vacuum is preferred for voltage, low voltage levels. Low voltage levels up to 33 kV. And for high voltages, the unanimous choice boils down to sulfur hexafluoride, SF6 circuit breakers. But one thing, many textbooks, Ramesh, now tell that SF6 breakers can be used up to 220 kV. Can you now, I just have one doubt, that can SF6 circuit breakers, as you told, they can be used to 765 kV with
Yes.
with a single interruption or series of many interruptions?
No, series of interrupters.
Okay. I mean, in circuit breaker, you will study that one fixed contact and one moving contact will be there. But here, when you have a series interruptions, you will have the circuit will break at different locations in series. So that what we can do, we can increase the voltage at which we are using that particular circuit breaker. So even at high voltages, if any competitive exam, you can understand that any high voltage SF6 is the best circuit breaker.
So here, we will discuss about this puffer circuit breaker, which are widely used nowadays. And even after this, there are other technologies they are developing by the manufacturers, but that is individual. These are puffer circuit breaker is a common technology for all the manufacturers. So here we will just have a look about how the operation of this. So here you can see this green one is the moving part, okay, and this is the fixed part, okay. So this moving contacts, as it starts moving, so here this is the volume, you can see this volume starts compressing, okay. So as it moves away from this, then arc will be established. Okay, initially after main contacts separation, then there will be arcing contact separation. So arc will be established, and that arc, see here, since it has compressed, then there will be differential in pressure between these two volumes. So there will be arc extinction happening through the differential pressure. So this is the technology what they are using. So for extinction. So first these main contacts will be separated, then arcing contacts will be separated. And the arc extinction happens because of the differential pressure in the puffer cylinder and the other downstream region. Now physically you can see this is the oil circuit breaker. It is a high voltage, that is for sure, but what is the voltage level, that is not sure. So but it is a bulky, you can see it's very bulky, this circuit breaker. And nowadays they are not using these oil circuit breakers, and even this air blast circuit breaker. This air blast circuit breaker, you can see there is a air reservoir here, and this air compressed air is used for extinguishing the arc. This is the arc extinction chamber, okay. And this is a vacuum interrupter, vacuum circuit breaker. So here these are the electrodes, and this is the gap which these electrodes, once they start moving, then there will be arc, and this arc gets extinguished through the vacuum. And this is a typical SF6 circuit breaker. You can see that this is a dead tank circuit breaker. You can see these individual poles are mounted in the frame itself. So the interrupting chamber is at ground potential. Then you can see there are bushing current transformers on each pole, and the bushings and the lines are connected on either side of the bushing. So it's a three-pole single throw. So three-pole operation that we will discuss further in the next slides. Yeah, based on operation, we can classify the breakers as three-pole single throw gang operation or a single pole. Means, so the circuit breaker can be, each pole can be operated individually, or we can have three-pole operation. Okay, so this single pole operation, it is preferred in EHV circuit breakers, especially these line circuit breakers where auto reclosing is there. So all EHV circuit breakers are generally provided with single pole operation. So each have independent operating mechanism. So you can see this is the operating mechanism. This is the interrupting chamber. These are the two interrupting chambers. So, and here you can see here, this is the insulator, and there is a, yeah, this is tripping spring actually. This tripping spring and the operating mechanism rod is connected through the through this insulator, and this is intermediate linkage for linking the operating mechanism to the actual interrupting chambers. And this is the operating mechanism box. It has a closing spring, and this is SF6 monitor actually. This is the closing spring, and the other components are mounted inside this box. And similarly for three-phase operated design, you can see for all three poles there is a single operating mechanism, and these are gang operated basically. All three poles are operated by the single operating mechanism. So now individual tank design is available from 12 kV to 800 kV EHV circuit breakers. And although SF6 circuit breakers are available in single tank design, now they are using three tank. Basically here I mean three pole. So three pole operation, three pole operated circuit breakers, they are widely used.
Single pole circuit breaker, SF6 circuit breaker. So single pole circuit breakers are widely used for stability reasons. To keep the stability intact, we will use the single pole circuit breakers, mainly in the extra high voltage transmission lines. At very high voltages, we go for the single pole circuit breaker. So every phase can be interrupted individually. That is, R phase will have one circuit breaker, Y phase will have one circuit breaker, and B phase will have one circuit breaker. Suppose if it is a three pole circuit breaker, single mechanism will operate and it will isolate all the three fixed contacts from the moving contacts. That is the point which Ramesh is trying to stress in this slide. Yes, Ramesh, you can continue.
Yeah, for generator circuit breakers, it is a three pole operation only. So single pole operation, basically we are using at the extra high voltage outdoor substations. Basically what I feel is there we have distance between poles itself is more because of the clearances, what is required from the point of view of standards and from point of view of maintainability. So it is preferred to have individual pole mechanism rather than a gang operating mechanism. And moreover, the line breakers, you need to have a single pole mechanism for auto reclose operation, because line breakers you need auto reclose function, because if there is any fault in the line, then the fault, if it gets cleared on its own within short time, like say any bird falling or any tree falling, so for those kind of faults, then you can allow the breaker to reclose automatically within short interval, specified short interval by the auto reclose relay. So for those cases, it is required to have this single pole operated designs. Now this CB operating mechanism, we have discussed about the operation of the circuit breaker, like closing or opening of the circuit breaker. So then the energy required for the closing or opening of the circuit breaker is provided by the operating mechanism. So this operating mechanism, this shall perform the full operation of the circuit breaker in all specified conditions. Here specified conditions means under normal operating conditions as well as fault conditions. So in both these conditions, this operating mechanism shall perform the full operation of the circuit breaker. And this response time shall be short enough to allow the interruption in the specified break time, that is interrupting time. Here interrupting time means it is starting from the point of contact separation till the arc extinction, and the again voltage withstand is built within the breaker. So here the command for opening the breaker comes from protection relay. So once the protection relay senses any fault, it gives a command to open the breaker, and this command is given to the breaker like an electrical command. Okay, it's an electrical pulse. So there will be closing coil and tripping coil. So the tripping coil receives the command from the relay, and it releases a latch in the mechanism. So once it releases the latch in the mechanism, then the mechanism, whatever the stored energy is there in the mechanism, that is used to operate the circuit breaker. The stored energy can be stored in springs or in a fluid under pressure. That depends on the type of the operating mechanism. Now we'll see types of operating mechanisms. Here, hydraulic operating mechanism, spring operated mechanism, and pneumatic mechanism, solenoid operating mechanism, and bistable magnetic operating mechanism. These are the different types of operating mechanisms are available. So if you see hydraulic operating mechanism, in that hydraulic pressure, that is pressure of a fluid, is used as a the stored energy for operating the circuit breaker. Whereas in a spring operated mechanism, we use the energy stored in the springs for opening or closing of the circuit breaker. In a pneumatic mechanism, we use that air compressed, that energy for opening or closing the breaker. And the solenoid operating mechanism, here by activating a solenoid or deactivating a solenoid. So that is that we use for operating mechanism. And bistable magnetic operating mechanism, that is a bistable magnet which has two different states. So that is used for opening or closing of the breaker. This both solenoid operating mechanism and bistable operating mechanism, bistable magnetic operating mechanism are used up to medium voltages. And the above hydraulic, spring operated, pneumatic, they are used up to high voltages and extra high voltages. So this hydraulic mechanism earlier until late mid 1980s, they have been more popular actually. So because they provide the energy, earlier the energy required for the breaker was more. The earlier designs of the breaker, the energy required to operate the breaker was more, and this hydraulic mechanism used to provide that energies. And also it is very fast, and but only thing is it is complex and it has a lot of components and there will be maintenance problems. Whereas spring operated mechanism, now it is becoming more popular, and you can see most of the EHV breakers or HV breakers are with spring operated mechanism. The spring operated mechanism, as I was telling, that they operate now HV circuit breakers up to 800 kV. So let us have a close look here. This is the spring mechanism. Here you can see this is the closing spring, and this is the opening spring, and this is the charging gear. Okay, here you can see further below here. See this, for the breaker to close. So for the breaker to close, this spring discharges. As this spring discharges, this charging gear rotates like this, and it energizes the tripping spring. So the energy released in the closing operation is used for storing the energy in the tripping spring. So these spring mechanisms are widely used nowadays because of the latest advancements in inverter designs, and the energies required for opening or closing of the breaker, the energy required for opening or closing the breaker has become less as compared to previous days. Now, why this operating mechanism is more important actually. So if you see this SIGRE 1994 survey on reliability of CB, so they are telling that the mechanism of CB is responsible for 43% of major outages and 44% of minor outages. That means most of the times there is a problem with operating mechanism only. So if there is a problem with operating mechanism, it can be a major outage or minor outage, depending upon the type of the problem that you encounter. And they are also telling in another study that spring operating mechanism has the highest reliability, and they have given some tips. Now we completed circuit breaker and we move on to disconnector or isolator. So isolator, the purpose of the isolator is to provide a physical isolation, in the network from live part to non-live part. Okay, so you have to provide a physical isolation for a person to work or for the maintenance. There are different types of disconnectors or isolators are there. So here we are going to discuss about this vertical brake switch, horizontal double brake switch or isolator, center brake, side brake, pantograph isolator, and this grounding switch here I have put because this grounding switch is a part of the isolator physically. Yeah, we will see this vertical brake. So this vertical brake isolator, here you can see the blade opens in perpendicular to the plane of the base of the isolator. This blade opens perpendicular. Okay, you can see here, this is the open position and this is the closed position. This is the side view and this is the operating mechanism of that isolator, and this is the actual picture of that isolator. So here you have a isolator. This isolator is mounted in a hinge. It is rotated, means it is the operating mechanism rotates this isolator to provide the opening or closing of this isolator blade. So this the other two insulators are support insulators. Next, the other one, horizontal double brake isolator. In horizontal double brake isolator, these are mounted horizontally, and here isolation is happening at 2 points. That means it is breaking at 2 points. So this end conductor is connected, this end your line conductor is connected, and here braking operation is happening. So this is parallel to the base of the isolator, and this center insulator is mounted on a hinge. The operating mechanism rotates this center insulator and isolates this network. Okay. Next one is horizontal center brake switch. In a horizontal center brake switch, you can see this isolator brakes, means it opens at the center point. Actually, it's only at the center point it opens. You can see here, this is the open view of the isolator. Here, both the insulators are mounted on a hinge, and the operating mechanism rotates both the insulators to provide the open or close operations of the isolator. And yeah, these are widely used in our outdoor substations. And whatever key SLD we have shown is this center brake one only. This is a side brake switch. Here, one insulator is mounted on the hinge, and this insulator rotates by the operating mechanism and opens to one side. For both closing and opening, this insulator rotates and provides the closing and opening of the isolator. Now this pantograph isolator, this pantograph is a special type of isolator. Here it is single brake and vertical reach type.
Ramesh, can you zoom this image? It is very new. Pantograph is something new. Can you zoom that one image?
Yeah, you can see here, this is isolator is in a closed position. This is in a closed position. This is actually bus, and this is the contact for isolator to make the contact. And this is actually, these are the arms of the pantographic isolators. 4 arms are there, and these are mounted on the insulator. Okay, you can see the figure here. This is the diagram of that. So here there are 2 insulators are there. So one is a support insulator, other one is a rotary insulator. So the operating mechanism rotates this rotary insulator and provides the operation of this. Like say here, when the pantograph isolator is closed, these arms are like this. So here they are making the contact. They are this contact bar, they are holding it here. Okay. So when it opens, means when it opens, these arms will come down like this. These arms will come down like this. Okay, so the actual terminal is here at one side, and the other one is the top one. Okay, top one here. This is the contact bar. So this is one terminal for connection to the bus and one terminal for connection to the other end of the isolator. So current flow will be like this only, through this only, through both these arms and to this bar. Okay, and you can see the open picture view. Actually, this is the open view. This is the open view. So these arms are down, came down actually, and these are also provided with some springs actually for adjustments, because normally these conductors will have sag. These conductors will have sag, so they are provided with spring adjustment so that you can adjust at side the position. Is it clear? Now we'll go. And basically these pantograph isolators are used in 400 kV substation for busbar connections. So busbar, this is a busbar isolator. Now we move on to grounding switch. This grounding switch, the purpose of the grounding switch to discharge the currents in a isolated part of the network. Here, once the isolator is opened, then you need to discharge that the part of the network where you need to work. Okay, so this is the isolator. This is a double break isolator. You can see this is the earthing blade actually. So here there is one operating mechanism for earth switch and one operating mechanism for the operation of the isolator. So all three earth switches are operated by one operating mechanism. Here it will close the earth switch or open the earth switch. This moves vertically and makes a contact here, and this is earth actually. This point, the other end is earth connected to ground mat in a substation. So
Ramesh, it is a gang operated earth switch, right?
Yes, gang operated earth switch.
So gentlemen, first you should know that once you isolate the equipment to discharge the static electricity or whatever the energy, magnetic or capacitive energy it has, we'll first, before touching it or before doing any operation, we have to discharge completely its energy. So the grounding switch or earth switch has very much significance. So once you disconnect any part, any live terminal, first you have to connect it to ground and discharge its energy. Then only you have to do any repair job or maintenance job or any other job. So these earth switches are very, very important in industry. Okay.
And it will have interlock. Okay, so you cannot operate the earth switch without opening the isolator. So there will be mechanical interlock, and as well as if there is electrical operation, we can have electrical interlock also. So mechanical interlock is a must. So you cannot open, we cannot open or close the earth switch without opening the isolator.